And now we have our new stepping stone, our new milestone with this Cancer solstice. It has a greater sense of destiny about it, this solstice. And that isn't something I often talk about in astrology. Rather, I go the other way, because I so often say that astrology is only half the picture, and the other half is we as co-creators are weaving that energy into manifestation, which we absolutely are. But there's certain aspects of astrology which I think are more destined or fated. The nodal axis, I think, has that quality. The eclipses, and of course the eclipses, the lunations have to happen close to the nodal axis to form eclipses. But also I think what we're going to be looking at are fingers of fate, fingers of God, in this particular chart for the Cancer solstice. Remember that ancient peoples have celebrated, have had celebrations around these equinoxes and solstices for hundreds and thousands of years. Somehow they knew that the veil was thinner, and that literally meant the magnetic field, the magnetosphere around the Earth was thinner at these times, and so that they could access high-level information more easily. How did they know that? Well, I think they were way more sophisticated than we in our modern times are, but we are going to start to remember those kinds of abilities and gifts. So let us look at the chart for this Cancer solstice. So the Cancer solstice is defined by when the sun enters 0 of Cancer, which we can see here. And beautifully, it is conjunct Jupiter, the planet of expansion. And Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. I've done a whole video on Jupiter and Cancer. I'll put the link for that below so I don't have to cover that same ground. But it is a very happy place for Cancer for Jupiter to be. Very much about self-care, spending time with loved ones, family and other loved ones, and a real sense of nurturing. But it brings with it this great sense of expansion. And this is absolutely what we are into now. And Jupiter also brings with us a sense of understanding the interconnectedness of all things. And it brings in a sense of long-distance travel. There's an interesting quincunx to Pluto, which I'll come back to in a minute. But this is really suggesting a much stronger galactic connection too, because Jupiter is about distant space, and Aquarius is very connected to the galactic beings, the foreigners, the outsiders, but actually they are our family, as we are going to, I think, increasingly discover. So, and this is also connected to our wisdom as well, our higher consciousness. So there's a sense of expanding our higher consciousness from this point on, particularly over the next 3 months. And I think that is absolutely spot on for the other energies. Sun and Jupiter are square to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which all astrologers are talking about right now. I'll put the video I did for that below, so again, I won't have to cover that again. But this is really, I think, ultimately about our spiritual sovereignty, becoming your own spiritual leader, your own spiritual hero as well. And so in this sense of expanding consciousness, that sense of sovereignty plays a huge part. And that's going to grow stronger and stronger from this point on. And I think what we're really looking at, it's so exciting, is a sense of expanding cosmic consciousness and galactic consciousness. We're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. We're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. Well, this is the expanded consciousness, Sun, Jupiter, and they are actually semi-square to Venus. Love, Venus in its own sign of Taurus. Beautiful. So that mantra of we're welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love will serve you very well if you can't think of anything better to celebrate in these times we are going through. And there's a sense of spiritual idealism at this time. Yes, Saturn, Neptune, but also a groundedness. Saturn is really helping us here, because without that, Jupiter, Neptune can be a little bit big bubble, over idealistic, no limits. Saturn grounds it. What's practical? What's realistic? What's pragmatic? How can we plan for the long term? So it's actually incredibly helpful. Now, what is very interesting as well here is we have 4 planets, Saturn, Neptune, Sun, Jupiter, on the Aries point or the world axis. Those terms are interchangeable. The Aries point isn't just 0 of Aries, it actually applies to 0 of Cancer, 0 of Libra, 0 of Capricorn. And those are also the points of what is known as the world axis, where qualities or events are thrown into public prominence potentially. But how can we still be at war? How are we still killing each other? I mean, it just is so far away on a different timeline. And the more we can move to the timeline of love and joy and bliss and gratitude and all the things we talk about, the less war will be part of our reality. It will just go to black and white and then just fade away, which is actually exactly what's happening. But I think it is a very, very dynamic, event-packed, as I said way back in January, chaotic at times year. And recognize that the chaos and the breakdown of the old has to be part of the picture. We have to see it, partly to say we're not doing that again, but partly to know that old energy is now gone. The most powerful thing you can do, I feel, is keep it simple. Drop into stillness. Close your eyes. Watch your breath. Fall in love with the breath. Imagine that your breath is not only being breathed in and out of your heart with love, but you are breathing love into every single cell of your body.
Why I love wildness so much? 2 reasons, actually. The first is that from all of my experience of studying my childhood and studying my parents, especially studying, well, the person whose job it was to love me the most and the person who I thought loved me the most, my mom, I've come to the realization that my mom didn't want to create me or have me so that I could grow up to be free and independent. That is wild. She wanted a pet. She wanted a domesticated creature who would be there for her, who would love her, who would focus its attention on her. And I specifically use that word its, not his attention, not my attention. I was an it. I was an object there to please her like a pet. And my wild, spirited side, well, it threatened her. She didn't like it. She tried to break it down. She pathologized it in all sorts of different ways. Traumatizing ways that literally clipped parts of me off, well, so that I would shut myself down and be softer. I think right away, from the moment I was born, she had me circumcised. My genitals would be circumcised. It's like, this is a mark of domestication. You are not as you were created to be. We will make you fit into some mold of social acceptance for her sake. Certainly not for my sake. I didn't want that. But that was just one example along the way. I was thinking about it just when I started as a young adult, and certainly into my 20s, striving and struggling to be independent, to be myself, to take distance from her. It was like I had broken the rules. I wasn't allowed to go and be free. And being free was something that my soul cried out for. And that brings me to the second part of wildness. Some reason I knew I was just so attracted to wildness is that starting as a young boy, I loved the wilderness. I loved being alone in the wilderness, out in the forest.
Yes.
I grew up in upstate New York, and I was allowed to go wander off into the forest from a young age. And there was something about it that called to my soul. It was a place where I could be free, where I could be safe. Safe being the true me I always was, knew I was. There was some resonance I had with the wilderness, with the animals of nature, the plants of nature, the trees of nature, the wind. And that never changed for me, that special feeling of being alive in this living world without humans in it. And when I think of wildness also, why I am so drawn to wildness, why I called my website Wild Truth. What was it about my website that was wild? And what allowed me to go to this wild truth? To me, the wild truth is the truth of the true self. The inherent birthright of every baby human being. And what I have come to see is that it is a normal, not a good thing, but a normal thing, a normal human phenomenon for families the world over, parents the world over, cultures the world over, religions the world over, to take that wildness of the child and do what my parents did, shear off its wild, crazy edges, shear off its radical sides, shear off its connection with itself. Don't let this child know who it really is. Block it, traumatize it. And traumatizing it is the way of what happens in the world. This is what families do. Even what they are supposed to do according to society and religion. You're supposed to beat that child, beat the wildness out of them. Wildness is considered bad. You are supposed to break that horse, break its wildness, and make it domesticated, make it fit in, make it normal, make it acceptable, make it ready to go to school where it can sit in a desk all day and learn all this information that may or may not be true and regurgitate this information when it is told to do it. Teach this little creature to speak only when spoken to not ask too many questions, to not be very curious, to not have too many feelings. When the child feels pain and feels sadness and feels rage about being stripped away from who they really are, not being allowed to be who they really are, being punished and humiliated and deprived, even physically attacked and hit for being violated, for being natural and true. The child is not allowed to have his or her true feelings. That wild reaction, this wild truth, is not allowed, is punished. The child experiences more rejection for having a reaction to having his or her true self rejected. And to me, the wild truth is the healing process, the process of healing from trauma, healing from the traumas that stripped the child of their wildness. It's the process of coming back to the truth of who we really are. And then there's the question, are all people naturally, inherently wild? I would say that all people have the potential to be wild. All people are certainly born with that potential to develop consciousness around their inner, bright, shining core of wildness. So many children are stripped of their unconscious connection with their wildness so early on through trauma that they become emotionally dead. They become so split off, disassociated, or in the psychology world, they have the defense of dissociation. So they are really, really disconnected, not associated with the truth of what is in them. And the first thing that they need to reclaim that wildness is to feel all their post-traumatic feelings. If you don't heal from the traumas, you can never return to your wildness. And it's been a 30-year dedication for me to return to my wildness. I would say I've done pretty well. I've become a lot more wild. But it's hard in this domesticated world where wild people are considered dangerous. They're considered suspect. They're considered renegade. People don't necessarily trust them. They don't trust them in domesticated places a lot. I know this for myself because to survive in our crazy world, to function in our crazy world, crazy being domesticated, shut down, split off, dissociated, disconnected, in denial, normal, I have had to at one level, kind of fake it. And at another level, well, kind of partially shut down just to, again, survive. It's really a very unpleasant process to function in this so shut down, domesticated world. It's like, I think of wolves. Wolves in America. Wolves in Europe and in Asia. A lot of times, if they're outside of some sort of protected national park, they're just shot on sight. They're dangerous. We don't like them. You know what the difference is between a wolf and a dog? I heard someone say this once. I thought it was brilliant. The difference between a wolf and a dog. A wolf can feed itself. That's how I see myself. A sort of wild creature who is independent. I have learned how to feed myself. I think that's a huge part of becoming an independent adult, a real independent adult, not an emotionally dependent child who puts on an adult facade. That's what most adults are. I had to figure that out over a long period of time, that my parents, when I was a child, these people who I thought were mature, functional adults, I thought they were the pinnacle of psychological sophistication. I had to figure out by the time I was an adult, actually, they're just broken little children, unconsciously split off broken little children who are functioning in adult bodies. That's what I was raised to be. My mom loved the idea of me becoming a PhD in biology, getting a doctorate in biology and becoming normal and shut down and being a broken little kind of nerdy person who goes through life doing little experiments and teaching classes on biology and teaching the scientific method, but not applying any of that science to my inner self, not really collecting the truth of the data about what is going on inside of me on an emotional level, learning about my history, really studying the truth of my history, studying what really happened to me by collecting data about it, making hypotheses, being willing to challenge my preconceived idea about the healthiness of my parents. That threatened the hell out of my mom. I ended up getting a PhD in self-knowledge, a PhD in truth. Ooh, she did not like that at all. And heaven forbid, when I became a psychotherapist and I started making a living at that job, helping other people do that, she didn't like it. She didn't support it at all. She wanted me to be a broken little domesticated college professor somewhere in a little laboratory somewhere, doing nothing, not being useful to anyone, and not challenging her. The pet that she created me to be was not supposed to run away from home and break away from her. I had a lot of pets when I was a kid. Some of them were domesticated animals, cats, dogs, parakeets, but some of them were not domesticated animals. Snapping turtles and hermit crabs, lizards. Had a pet woodchuck for a while, a wounded woodchuck. A rabbit, my cat, had caught a baby rabbit once, and, well, I helped nurture it back to health. I loved this rabbit and gave it a name, but it was a wild cottontail rabbit. And I freed it eventually, and it went back into the wild. Some of the animals died before they ever were freed. I set my snapping turtles free when they grew a little bit bigger. Now I wonder, was that a good idea? Had they become too domesticated? Had they been deprived of the knowledge of how to find food for themselves? Did they go back into the stream from which they came and die? I don't know. I wish them the best. It's quite possible some of them are still alive now. If they lived, snapping turtles can live decades and decades and decades. And I wonder about this whole idea of pets in general. It's a little questionable because I often, well, certainly living in New York City, I see people mistreat their pets all the time. The dogs who stay inside all day while their owners are at work and the dogs can't pee and they just they whine and cry because they want to get outside and they want to socialize with other dogs. And instead they're inside bored out of their minds waiting for their owners to come home. And, well, often their owners don't empathize with them that well. I've also seen dogs, domesticated dogs, who are abandoned by their owners and form packs and become feral, and cats that are abandoned by their owners and become feral, living out in the wild. And the cats seem to do better. They're very quickly adapt to becoming feral. I think probably humans are a little bit more like dogs. We're a bit more domesticated, and the transition back to our wildness is harder, but it's not impossible. And with that, I think I'd like to wrap this up. And I would like to do it with this final thought, that the most profound way to return to our wildness is to return to our psychological wildness by healing our traumas and manifesting our true selves as adults.
Society isn't a natural form of human connection. It's a parasitic architecture that mimics safety and belonging, but serves a system of external control. From childhood, you're conditioned to believe that being part of society means conforming, not being yourself, not hearing yourself, not preserving your uniqueness, but submitting to rules made by others for others. This is the core of this infection. Any system where recognition and support depend on following norms isn't a community. It's a training mechanism. You get love and basic security only if you stay within the acceptable. This means they don't love you. They love the shell you wear to survive. The better you play the game, the more you become that shell, while the living inner you fades out of frame. Social institutions aren't built to protect you. Their function is to maintain order, control, discipline, and shape your behavior to fit the system's needs. Education, medicine, law, economics, psychotherapy, the military, religion, all are built on the assumption that you need to be fixed, subdued, adapted, integrated, and constantly evaluated for compliance. Not help or support, but correction and standardization. You're not a person, you're a variable to be formatted, sorted, and regularly checked for alignment. Education doesn't teach you to think, it strips you of thought. The system doesn't train you to reason, it trains you to pick the right answers. It doesn't ask who you want to be, it offers templates. You don't explore the world, you master an approved set of judgments. Ask questions outside the curriculum and you're a problem student, a deviant, a disruptor. Medicine stopped being the art of preserving life and became a system for tracking productivity. Illness isn't a sign something's wrong with the world. It's a malfunction. Health isn't inner coherence, but a set of metrics. They don't ask how you feel. They run you through a table of norms. If you feel awful but your tests are fine, it's your fault. You're a malingerer. You're lazy. You're dodging responsibility. The system has a universal answer. You have no right to suffer unless the system validates it. The law doesn't shield you from arbitrary power. It standardizes acceptable arbitrary power given it form. You are not guaranteed justice, but a set of procedures where the winner is whoever plays the system's rules better. Justice is unprovable in court without resources. Ethics isn't an argument unless it's codified. You're not the subject of justice, you're an object of control. The economy isn't designed to give you a decent life. It's built to funnel resources to those who control the system. You don't work to live. You live to avoid dying without work. Every piece of the economic structure is rooted in fear of loss. Status, shelter, legitimacy, access to resources, it's a blackmail. And all economic activity is framed as personal responsibility, even though the system is rigged with unequal access and discrimination from the start. The social structure doesn't care about you. It robs you of your right to be yourself, not through violence, but through care, therapy, support. But all this help aims to reintegrate you, make you convenient, normal, so you never ask who you really are. Society isn't a family, it's a prison with soft walls, where cells are decorated with slogans like, be yourself, unlock your potential, find balance. But every step off script is punishable. Any deviation is a diagnosis, any pain a defect, any honesty a threat. And if you stop playing along, you become socially dangerous. If you feel this dissonance, it's not because you're broken. It's because something in you still works. The part that resists, questions, remembers itself. You're not unfit for the society. Society is unfit for you. And once you see the structure, the question isn't how to adjust. It's how to dismantle what was never meant to serve you. This makes me think about something I've experienced personally. After I started recognizing the system and how it operates, I developed what I can describe as physical sensitivity to fake people. When someone is being inauthentic or trying to manipulate my emotions, I feel it in my body before my mind processes it. It's not cognitive recognition of specific techniques. It's something much deeper and more immediate. This alarm system became so much stronger and clearer that it honestly freaked me out at first. I had always had these weird feelings before, but I thought something was wrong with me, that I had anxiety or social phobia. I'd be talking to someone who seemed perfectly normal, and physical sensations would just start appearing tension, unease, sometimes a sudden adrenaline rush before I could consciously identify what was wrong. I call it my manipulation watchdog now. Very useful creature. So, if plants can sense and copy forms without eyes, maybe humans can sense authenticity and deception without conscious analysis. Maybe pattern recognition goes much deeper than we think.
Psilocybin changes the brain, but not the way anyone expected. When neuroscientists finally put volunteers in MRI machines and gave them psilocybin, they thought brain activity would explode, more neural firing, more energy, more chaos. Instead, they saw the opposite. The brain got quieter. Specifically, one part went almost silent, the default mode network. The default mode network is your brain's control center. It's the voice in your head, the thing that says I when you think about yourself. It creates your ego, the boundary between you and everything else, your sense of self. On psilocybin, that shuts down. Not partially, not temporarily, the entire network goes offline. And when it does, something extraordinary happens. Brain regions that never talk to each other suddenly connect. The visual cortex starts communicating with areas that process emotion. Memory centers link up with parts that control body awareness. It's like every neighborhood in a city suddenly building roads to every other neighborhood. Robin Carhart Harris at Imperial College London discovered this in 2012. He called it neural anarchy. But it wasn't anarchy, it wasn't chaotic, it was reorganization. The connections formed during these psychedelic experiences don't just disappear when the drug wears off. Brain scans show new neural pathways remaining active for weeks, sometimes months. In some cases, the changes appear permanent. Johns Hopkins researchers found something even stranger. People who took psilocybin in controlled settings showed lasting personality changes. Not mood changes, personality changes. They became more open, more creative, more connected to others. This shouldn't be possible. Personality is supposed to be fixed by age 30, but psilocybin rewrote that rule. And here's what really puzzled scientists. Psilocin, what psilocybin becomes in your body, fits into human serotonin receptors perfectly. Not approximately, perfectly. Like a key designed for a specific lock. We share about 50% of our DNA with mushrooms. We split from a common ancestor over 1 billion years ago. Yet somehow these fungi produce a compound that seems tailor-made for the human brain. Paul Stamets, the world's leading mushroom expert, thinks this isn't a coincidence. He believes humans and mushrooms have been evolving together, what he calls co-evolution. Brain scans prove psilocybin creates new neural connections. They prove it dissolves old patterns. They prove it fundamentally changes how we think. But ancient civilizations didn't need MRI machines to know this. They've been using mushrooms for thousands of years.
Another principle, this time borrowed more from biology, or rather evolutionary science rather than physics, is canalization. What is canalization? Well, it's got an interesting history. It actually goes back to the French philosopher Henri Bergson, where, a bit like what I'm trying to do today, he used analogy to speak to things, I suppose, in the universe. And the analogy was that of a canal, things being rooted in a particular direction, entrenched in a particular direction. Now, in the context of evolutionary science, canalization is actually the inverse of plasticity, where plasticity, if you were to look it up in the dictionary, says the ability of a thing, a phenomenon, to be shaped or molded. So it's not the actual change, but it's the ability, the capacity to be changed. So for example, taking a metal here, heating it up, making it more plastic, making it more shapeable, that's a system that now is becoming malleable, and in a sense, the inverse of canalization, which could be thought of as a resistance to change, like things getting stamped into your genome, so that from generation to generation, generally speaking, we have 2 arms, 2 legs, and so on. So phenotype stamped into the organism, resistant to change, is canalization. Its flip side is plasticity. Why am I focusing here? Because in fact, it was this year, I introduced a theory of psychopathology, a theory of mental illness that emphasized canalization as a common principle, ways of thinking and behaving that get too entrenched, too stamped in, too resistant to change. The main thing of psychopathology or mental illness, I'm saying, is canalization, that excessive overweighting of certain ways of thinking and behaving. What's the solution? Well, I suggest it's this generalized plasticity, increasing the ability to be shaped or molded, and that indeed is what psychedelics seem to do.